Hi, I'm Jeffery Stuffings, owner-brewer at Jester King Craft Brewery in the Texas Hill Country, and you're watching the Beer Diaries.
Rolling fast down I-35, through the day and past the
Hey folks, Greg Zeschuk of the Beer Diaries. I'm here at one of my favorite breweries here in Austin, Texas, Jester King Craft Brewery, here with Jeff Stuffings, the owner, brewmaster, co-owner, brewmaster of the place. It's a place I've been before. I've spent some time at this very bar, and I'm very familiar with many of the beers, but it's gonna be an amazing visit today, talking to Jeff and learning a bit more about the place. So
Cool,
thanks.
yeah, cheers,
Cheers,
Thanks
sir.
for being out here.
So to be fair, I've been chasing you for a while. You know, I've been trying to connect up, and because I've been wanting to talk to you. It's been, and like I said, it's the challenge of running a really successful operation. You guys have grown how much? Like what's happened with you guys in the last year? And January is your birthday, almost a year and a half.
Yeah, that's right. We opened in October of last year. Actually, I should say 2010. And right now, I think we're just trying to focus in on achieving our artistic vision of what we want to do. We've done several beers over the last year and a half, as well as kind of getting our barrel program up and running, because a lot of what we're interested in is trying to incorporate our natural surroundings as much as we can with wild yeast in our barrel program. And it's just been a very long time to make a lot of those beers, so we're just now feeling we're starting to kind of do what we're artistically most interested in.
One of the things I found really cool about what you guys did is you were very ambitious in the styles and types of beers. Like, I mean, you didn't really stick to real set styles. I mean, you have a bunch of Farmhouse Ales, like hoppy farmhouse, and all kinds of really interesting stuff. What was it that made you think, hey, we're going to go a little different direction than the pack? What was that about?
Well, sure. I mean, when we were coming up with the plan to start a brewery, we looked around our state and saw some really excellent styles of beer being made in the German tradition, English tradition, and American tradition, and really didn't see much being brewed in kind of the Franco-Belgian farmhouse tradition. And with that said, like at that time, just in our drinking lives, we were getting access through friends and actually one of my coworkers here at Jester King, just some really excellent small artisan beer from parts of Europe, whether it be Cantillon or Drefontainen, Fantôme, just these, and really fell in love with these styles of beer and wanted to just brew our interpretation of it here in the Hill Country.
And so one of the things that you guys have, and we're going to showcase this is an amazing facility. Like, I mean, when I first came here, probably a year ago, I was rolling away. I mean, we're in the Texas Hill Country. I was not originally from Texas. I'm a Canadian. So I was expecting like tumbleweeds and dry grass. I wasn't expecting beautiful rolling hills, trees, like this idyllic place, right? And so the thing that's amazing is that it feels like you really fit in here physically. This almost campus. I mean, there's like picnic tables, there's places to hang out. The building itself is great. This was, I think, originally a machine shop of some sort.
That's right. It was an old machine shop down in the valley near Victoria.
And then you added this tasting room, the tap room here that we're standing in, and this is a great place to hang out. You come here on the weekend, you got food trucks, you got music.
Yeah.
Like, I think, is it every weekend you offer tasting almost, or
yeah,
how
every Saturday. And as far as like what we want this land to ultimately be, I mean, one of the cool things about it is the person who owns this whole 200-acre ranch kind of shares our vision of having it be a place where there's kind of a series of small artisan businesses. We're really the first one, but we're inviting a mushroom grower, a soy milk maker.
I heard there's some kind of pizza thing happening here.
Yeah, there's going to be a little stone, or I should say, wood-fired pizza, stone oven.
I hear pizza goes well with beer. Is that true? They kind of like fit well together. One of the things, actually, I mean, that festival atmosphere was really apparent during your anniversary. I was lucky enough to be here back earlier this year. I was here for the anniversary, and holy cow, I mean, you have a lot of fans. Like, I mean, I remember sitting, we're going to have a little, we said, hey, let's go and let's check it out. First of all, it's really tough to get tickets. They sold out how fast? Like days?
Yeah, it was just a few days. Yeah,
It's like 700 or something, 800. Like
yeah, we sold. Yeah, we ended up selling 700 tickets, and it's still a little surreal to us, like that people.
and there were people wanting, like, trying to get these tickets too. This was not like you tapped the market. This was like Craigslist, where people were like, please get us more tickets.
Yeah, it's still a little surreal to us that people are when you do something creatively, artistically, it's a little scary, like to kind of put yourself out there, like this is our creation, this is what we do. Will you accept it or reject it, or somewhere in between? And so it's still kind of surreal to us to see people who would actually line up to do experience what we do. But with that said, as far as just keeping it kind of small, not selling several thousand tickets, is we always want this place to be kind of very kind of chill, kind of just a place you can kind of hang out in the hill country and not just be have some mob scene kind of deal.
Even then, I remember that day. Like, I mean, you have these awesome limestone steps that kind of come up to the front, and I remember standing on those. And one of the neat things with the tap room as well, not only do you showcase your beers, you have some really interesting Belgians on here, as you mentioned earlier. Like, I mean, there's a Cantillon on that day, and when that happened, there was this gigantic lineup, and it wasn't quite a riot, but I mean, it must be it's like, and like you said, I mean, you want to showcase not just your stuff, but kind of like some of the inspirational beers of what.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we feel we owe a debt of gratitude to a lot of these really excellent farmhouse artisan brewers that came long before us, and also we want to kind of to us, we see it as more of a category of beers that really isn't anything that involves borders. I mean, we're supportive of certainly the Texas scene and are involved in the guild, and feel some state camaraderie, but that's not entirely how we feel. We also feel camaraderie with small artisan brewers around the world, and want to support them as well. And our tap room gives us a venue to put on every week out here, something pretty super rare, small batch, that people can kind of see. This is another take on the farmhouse tradition, and kind of see some of the inspiration behind what we do.
Right. In terms of the actual brew house itself, like, I mean, how did that come about getting built? Like, you got this, did you bring this building from somewhere else and put it here?
We did. This place was just dirt when we started.
And you put the building, you put this machine shop in. Yeah. And then you got an awesome brew house. What's going on in there?
Yeah. Actually, speaking of Canada, we got it from Vancouver. Yeah. A company called Newlands Systems up in Vancouver area. It's a 30-barrel brew house. It brews about a little under 1,000 gallons of beer per batch, and then we have some stainless, and then at this point a pretty extensive oak fermentation program where we make our wild beers that are fermented with wild yeast and souring bacteria, and we have about 200 barrels right now, but we're expanding. We're actually going to build a proper barrel house where we can put several thousand barrels and really focus on oak aged wild sour beer, which is probably the style that we enjoy the most. Right. And so that's kind of where we want to go in the future. It's obviously inefficient, it takes up a lot of space, but
it's that artisanal element that's really important. One thing you touched on before, I think, actually on tour with you one time, I think we touched earlier, was some of the yeast you use. I mean, you don't just use like the usual, you can commercially purchase yeast from suppliers, but you guys harvest some of your own. So you are getting a real authentic local beer when you get one of your beers, because you're collecting yeast from the field here.
Yeah, certainly with our barrel-aged wild beer, we really try to embrace the concept of terroir, meaning a sense of place, where literally in your glass you're tasting flavors from the land. So we really, I feel we only truly achieve that with right now a small amount of beer that we make that actually is fermented in oak with wild yeast that we just capture and culture straight from the air here. If I could describe the concept of farmhouse brewing in one phrase, it would be embracing nature. And we can't do that the way farmhouse breweries did centuries ago, when literally they were getting every ingredient from just the farm.
Didn't they have open vats as well? I remember reading about the fact they literally have this vat in their corner of their house or outside, and just they'd turn it, like, be making it there, be fermenting it like live there.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, our malt comes from continental Europe and the Midwest, and our hops come from Pacific Northwest and the UK, as well as continental Europe. But in terms of our barrel-aged wild beers, we do use water we're on a well, we're not on city water, so all our beers have, I think, a distinct flavor from the water that we use just from the well here at the brewery. And then really where that concept of terroir, I think, really gets expressed is with the wild yeast. What we did when we started was just put some unfermented beer in an open air fermentation vessel on the roof of the brewery, let it sit out overnight, and just let wild yeast inoculate the wort. And then got a little more scientific from there. We're in a laboratory. We isolated the yeast, specifically isolated wild yeast that is acid producing, which would create some of those souring characteristics, as well as souring bacteria as well, like lactobacillus.
Some of the anaerobic stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like we use a lot of lactobacillus, the same same bacteria you'd find in like sourdough bread and
I think yogurt too, right?
Yogurt, absolutely. Yeah, there's.
That's that science background I've forgotten about. That kind of eventually sometimes bubbles to the surface and disappears.
Right. Yeah.
Lactobacillus.
Right.
Remember that. Where did the name Jester King come from? Like, what's the deal with that?
To us, it's a metaphor where the jesters of the beer world are the small artisan brewers doing creative, interesting beers, and the king represented Anheuser-Busch, and we want the jesters to be the king of the beer world, not them. So it's our little dig at the most giant monolithic industrial brewer on the planet. So. We're not going to be on the air because of that, Oh wait, we're not on the air. We're on the interwebs. They can't stop us. Yeah, we're not on Discovery Channel where they can shut down Brewmasters.
Oh boy. So your background, what was your were you a home brewer? I mean, have you brewed somewhere else professionally? What's your background?
No, I've never brewed anywhere else professionally. Home brewing was something I fell in love in when I was in school. Just a friend got me into it, let me borrow his gear, and from there it became kind of an obsessive hobby where eventually it was all I really wanted to do, and decided to try to make the leap into professional brewing and start my own shop.
That's totally crazy, right? A crazy thing to do. Like, you are aware that's like, hey, I'm going to do this thing that includes some of the giants competitors on the face of the earth. I'm just going to give it a shot. And you did it. What?
I've had a lot of help, but and then even though I've never worked professionally at another brewery, a lot of the local brewers here were very helpful in terms of information of how to build out a brewery. There's a long list, but the folks at Real Ale, Uncle Billy's, 512 were particularly helpful to
all these folks
us.
are real supportive.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one thing I find. There's a really great community of brewers, and it's one of the things we talk a little bit about is the local Austin scene. The fact that there's something about the local scene, and actually about the fact that there's a real locavore movement. People want local products. They don't want to have mass-produced stuff from elsewhere. They want unique things. They want things that reflect the local environment. A big part of it. You guys play into that. What have you seen? How has that managed for you guys to be successful? Was that a big leg up?
Well, I think you touched on, I'm not sure if it's answering the question precisely, but I think you touched on something that I've heard expressed that I think is really, really true, and that is in the beer world, we're getting almost a return to the past, a return to the way it should be.
No, true.
Where
it's very local, very, very regional, super regional.
Exactly. Like beer traditionally does not come from three giant brewers fanned out across the country. Yeah. It should be a local neighborhood thing with your butcher, baker, and brewer.
Yeah.
And I think we're getting back to that, where brewing isn't just a citywide thing, but even a neighborhood thing. You're seeing that with kind of the rise of more nano breweries that really just sell beer to the block.
Yeah, it's incredible, actually.
Yeah, it's cool, and people want quality and diversity. So of course, the quality has to be there. But one of the things that I enjoy tremendously is when I go to a different city, checking out the local beer scene, because it's not like I'm drinking the light lager that I had in Austin that I'm having now in Kalamazoo, Michigan. There's totally different flavors, and it's fun to check that out.
And and it's also geographic. There's seasonal things. So there's all these different elements.
Exactly.
One thing I think that's amazing, speaking kind of playing off the community concept. What we're drinking right now is a beer called Drink in the Sunbelt, which is of course a collaboration with McKellar. For the viewers that may or may not know, McKellar's a very famous brewer, and he's what you call a gypsy brewer. He'll go around the world to different breweries. You've actually collaborated with him twice.
Yes.
Twice at least, or more than
twice?
Twice. So Drink in the Sunbelt was one, and then also the Beer Geek Rodeo. Is Is that correct? And there's also the Weasel one, but that's a secret beer, I think.
Oh,
Semi-secret.
well,
It's on the wall there. I keep eyeing it
it's
up.
out now. So,
Is it?
Or no, I should say. I mean, it hasn't been
It's-
released, but like the concept has been released.
Yeah,
and what
yeah.
it's going to be. Yeah.
That's awesome. But I mean, but working with McKellar, like, what was that like? I mean, this is a guy that has a huge reputation. How do you find him? How do you find you? What was how'd that start, and how was that experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the, it's kind of silly, really. I mean, we were just at the Craft Brewers Conference in Chicago, and a good friend of ours runs West Lakeview Liquors in Chicago, which is this really great bottle shop there, and she let us stay in like the little flat above her her store, and she's also friends with Tomas and Mikkel from Mikkeller, and
So that's a proper pronunciation. I've been doing it totally wrong.
Oh,
See
I
that,
was
folks?
too,
He
actually.
corrected Mikkeller. He's corrected me now. I've got a bit of more beer knowledge.
Before I met him, I totally was pronouncing it wrong.
I'm
too,
using
yeah.
Canadian pronunciation. Mikkeller. All right.
Yeah.
So Mikkeller, yeah. And so
Yeah. So we basically like stayed in a flat with those guys for like a week and got to
that sounds dangerous.
Yeah, no, those guys are crazy.
I imagine they try a few beers.
Yeah, those guys are out of control. I don't know how they keep going, frankly.
Yeah.
But
You probably learn a lot of stuff from those guys, like brewing. I mean, it must be quite an experience.
yeah, they're super nice guys and really know beer tremendously well and do some really amazing stuff. Some of their stuff that I'm still in awe of how they do it. Just how they create some of the flavors that they obtain. But so we basically befriended them by sharing a place with them over the course of a week, and we talked about someday brewing together. And I think some of the concepts that we embrace, fit in well with them. So they were excited to brew with us. So we had them out here to Jester King in November and brewed the Beer Geek Rodeo, which is it was kind of odd because a lot of our beers kind of embrace kind of like classic European concepts like farmhouse brewing with simplicity of malt, hops, and yeast, and really nothing beyond that. Whereas they are almost take a more of an American mentality where it's a little more extreme, where they're borrowing from like the culinary world and throwing 12 different ingredients into the kettle.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a weird concept where the European was more extreme and the American was more traditional, which is totally the opposite of.
So it's the juxtaposition.
Yeah, exactly. But so the Beer Geek Rodeo, I mean, it was an imperial oatmeal stout with chipotle pepper, smoked malt, and then Kopi Luwak coffee, which is like the little weasel poop coffee where the rodents eat the beans and then excrete them, and then that actually goes into the beer. And then of course very high alcohol beer, where what we generally tend to do tends to be a little lower in alcohol, just because we really support the concept of session beer where you can drink for flavor, not necessarily for inebriation. Not that that's, and we brew some very high alcohol beers too.
There's some big numbers on that board back there. There's a couple of big numbers.
Yeah, we want to make sure we represent kind of the session beer category as well.
Absolutely. So the beer we're drinking right now, let's talk a little bit about the beers. I mean, that's one of the things. Well, first off, just generally, how far abroad are your beers available? Are they available throughout Texas? Whereabouts are they available?
We sell 98% of what we do in Texas, mostly in the major metropolitan areas, Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, San Antonio, a little bit down in the valley, and a little bit as far west. Actually, I'm not sure.
So it's kind of throughout Texas.
Throughout Texas.
Throughout Texas, cool.
Right.
And then as far as I mean, just real quick, like you guys offer a lot of beers. I mean, there's a whole big bunch of them on the wall behind you. I usually go through all of them with some folks, but you got quite a few. I mean, we could maybe just talk about the ones on the taps right now, if you prefer. Like obviously, let's see what we got there. Oh, Boxer's Revenge. I'm very familiar with that one.
Boxer's Revenge, barrel aged wild ale. It's one of the beers that we age in oak wine and whiskey barrels with the wild yeast we culture from the hill country, and then the souring bacteria. So it's got a lot of those kind of tart. It really epitomizes that wild ale concept. Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's not a sour per se, but it's real funky. I like that one a lot.
I kind of like to use the analogy of like a funky kind of blue cheese, where you get kind of that cheesy funk to it, which sounds totally weird for beer, but
it works.
I like it.
Le Petit Prince is a true session beer.
Yes.
Tell us about that one. That one came out, I think, just 6 months or so.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, we wanted to do our take on a very important historical style. Important in the sense that
Berliner Weiss, is that right?
Don't have any Berliner Weiss on, But,
you had a Berliner Weiss. That's right.
Right.
Okay, so what's the style? It's a farmhouse, but a lighter farmhouse style, or what's the?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about Petit Prince?
Yeah, Petit Prince, yeah.
Table beer, meaning
Okay.
that basically an everyday drinking beer that you could literally have with all meals of the day. And it was important in the sense that when people couldn't trust water as being
Yeah.
safe to drink, they would drink very low alcohol beer because it had been boiled. There was no harmful bacteria in it. They didn't know, people centuries ago didn't know why it was safe, but it turns out because it had been boiled. So we wanted to do our own take on it and brewed a very low alcohol table beer, about 2.9%.
Drinking the Sunbelt, the Mickler.
Yeah.
This was last year's, but is this fresh?
Yeah.
You rebrewed it, or what's?
Yeah, we rebrewed it. This beer is only about, it was brewed in May.
This is delicious beer. Like like I said, I've been saving a bottle of last year's in my fridge. I know it's kind of too old, but sometimes I'll report back what it tastes like. Well, now that I've had it, I can open it really soon. So really hoppy, and as you said, like low specific gravity, but still really thirst quenching. Like a great hot weather beer. It's unfiltered wheat as well.
Yeah, unfiltered wheat beer. All our beers are unfiltered, but this one's a little cloudy due to the dextrins in the wheat. Then we hopped it heavily, very American inspired, where a lot of the hops are Pacific Northwest hops, which have this kind of like grapefruit, mango.
Yeah, like I was saying, I found it was real lemon, like a lemon zest, orange zest kind of feel to it.
Yeah, but pretty low alcohol, 3.9%.
Wow, that's why I feel so lucid compared to my usual situation in these interviews after a long day of drinking beer. So the Witchmaker IPA, one of your earlier ones, I think was Commercial Suicide your very first.
That was the very first.
Which is a wonderfully ironic name.
I know it was a 3% alcohol dark ale, the very first beer we ever did. So
wasn't it like ESB and something else or something?
We were aiming for English mild was kind of our inspiration for that. So we called it Commercial Suicide just because we figured it was the exact opposite of the beer you try to achieve, like commercial success with coming right out of the gate as a brewery.
The Witchmaker though was that right after? Was that very?
Yeah, that was the second beer we released.
So I've always heard rye is a little hard to work with. So you decide, hey, let's do a rye beer as a rye IPA as our second beer. What was the inspiration there?
Yeah, that was more just really wanting to have a little bit of roots in the American tradition. Yeah. Hop wise, it's one of the small handful of beers that we really kind of focus on American hops, and then rye is just a flavor that we enjoy.
Typically, yeah,
spicy, a little earthy, and as a flavor, I wouldn't say it's hard to work with, but it certainly as a raw material that goes into making beer. Yeah,
I've heard. That's what I've heard. Is that's actually so. In other words, like okay, first you do a Commercial Suicide, and then you go, let's make a real hard one. I mean, there's a really audacious first couple beers for you guys.
Yeah, rye is kind of a pain to work with because it can get real gummy and mash and can kind of create some long brew days.
Long brew days cleaning things out. And
And so, Witchmaker, one of our early beers we did.
And the last one on the taps is Noble King, which I think came out. Was it about 6-7 months ago, like kind of earlier? I remember having it like right when it came out. It's like a hopped farmhouse, so like a nice hoppy, but then that farmhouse kind of bit of funkiness behind it, bit of tartness in it.
Exactly. Yeah. Right around the first of the year, and it's essentially the big sibling of Petit Prince, where it's almost the exact same ingredients, but just instead of a very small session strength table beer, a kind of conventional or medium strength beer around kind of that 5.5-6% alcohol range. Really, it's Petit Prince and Noble King are beers where we try to embrace simplicity and just kind of let the ingredients. It's almost like the Italian cooking philosophy in beer making. Just let good ingredients stand for themselves. So we just use all organic Pilsner malt and a little wheat, a little caramel, and then really kind of aggressively hop it with Kent Golding and Czech Saaz hops, which kind of have some nice peppery, earthy characteristics, and then just let the Farmhouse yeast, which we use for primary fermentation of all our beers, go to work. The yeast we use for primary fermentation for everything we do, it's a Saison yeast that was originally cultured from a small farmhouse brewery in northern France called Thirier. We like it for kind of spicy, citrusy flavors, and then it makes everything we brew really dry. It basically ferments out virtually all the the sugar, and it's just our palates really preferred dry.
It's a
beer.
dry, tight finish, but also still body. Like it's a nice body. So on the wall behind you is an incredible lineup of beers. I'm just going to call out a couple that I'm intimately familiar with, and one thing I do with this all the time is I declare my favorite beer of your guys. And
Cool.
my favorite beer is the Black Metal Stout.
Metal, yeah.
Well, the Black Metal Stout, and actually the Farmhouse variety is very interesting than the different ones. So are you still doing both types? One with the Farmhouse yeast, one with your original yeast? Or my couple remaining originals collector's editions in my fridge? Or
You should
sell those online?
No, but certainly enjoy them because we won't be doing.
Yeah.
We give out the recipe. We originally brewed that beer with English ale yeast.
Yeah.
And we still give out the recipe.
Well, it's an
to
imperial
home
stout
brewers, yeah.
in my mind that actually competes with the Abyss. Like I do a lot of tastings with friends, and we'll put it up against anything, and it is out of this world beer.
Cool.
I mean, I keep trying to figure out how to send you some Black Albert from Canada
because
that's another.
awesome.
That's another.
I
I got to figure out how to. The Texas laws are complicated, which brings us to another topic, which is the Texas laws around beer. You guys have had some involvements. I think the Brewers Guild, like the whole society of brewers has had some dealings with the government. I mean, there's challenges here. Like you, for example, you can't sell me one of those bottles. I could lay some money down on this table and go, come on, sell me one of those bottles.
Exactly. There's some really funny laws.
Yeah.
I mean, Texas as a state is basically, the law is written to explicitly benefit the giant brewers and their distributors. And it's really, very little is offered in the way of helping small local brewers. And so we've tried to...
Which are small businesses. You guys employ folks. And actually when you take a look at you collectively and you start taking a look at the externalities of brew pubs and things, it's a lot of people that are affected.
Yeah, no, it's true. I get frustrated in that, the politicians talk about, supporting local business, deregulating the environment.
The two-tier system or three-tier system. Wait, or did I say two or three? It's complicated.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, they're effectively legislating against their small homegrown business, which is very frustrating. But we're starting to, I think, have more of a critical mass as more and more Texas breweries come into existence, where I think in the future we might be able to make some changes. Like kind of the two big changes we're trying to obtain when the Texas legislature goes back into session next year would be to allow brewpubs to sell their beer beyond the four corners of their restaurant.
Right, which would be huge because they make some. There's some great brew pubs in town. We're going to talk to those guys, and they make some good stuff.
Absolutely, I always like to give the example of the Dogfish Head Brewery out of Delaware, which is an immensely successful, very good brewery. They started just brewing in a small system in their restaurant, and eventually. They caught on where now I think they're in over 30 states and doing really well.
They have it up in Canada.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's international.
If that success story could not be told in Texas because it's illegal, they never would have been allowed to sell beyond their little restaurant in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware.
Right.
Likewise, I love Uncle Billy's. They have a series of kind of Pilsner-esque beers, Keller beer, and
Keller Weiss.
Keller Weiss. I love those, and I wish I actually, with now a little daughter, don't get to go to the bars as much as I want to. So most of my drinking is at home. Well, I can't buy their beer in a store, so I
you can drink at work though.
That's true. Yeah, no, that
I wouldn't
helps.
recommend it every day, but see, some guys be watching this saying, "What's he? There's all this beer," but but you have a job where you actually have to try some. But what you're saying. Makes a lot of sense. Like it's actually not a fair playing field.
Right, and kind of we have the equal, us as a production brewery have the equal and opposite problem. We can sell beer out in the stores, but if you come to our brewery and want to take a bottle home, you're not allowed to.
Well, and you have this amazing place here, this beautiful, beautiful location. I mean, imagine you could totally have like a little restaurant on the side and an amazing garden to hang out. It'd become a real destination. It's like it's just one step away from that possibility.
Right, and unfortunately, unfortunately for us, that in most other states, if you go to a brewery, like for example, you can go to like Stone in California and drink all of their beers at their little bistro there, where that's illegal for us to do. So we're actually kind of a leg down or at a disadvantage from our out-of-state breweries. And it's not that we ever want to see them recede in their rights. We want to get to where they are.
Right.
Likewise, if you go to a winery in Texas, you can buy wine to take home, but not beer.
It's a lack of fairness among the different types.
So we're trying to not to sound as though it's all negative. I mean there is
there's been some progress. You guys made some progress recently, which is exciting. That's positive.
We did along with a retailer called Zach's Restaurant and Bar and a distributor called Authentic Beverage. We actually filed a lawsuit against the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission, and we were asking for the right to sell beer and for Brewpubs the right to sell beer offsite. So that part we lost, but we did win part of the suit. And it had to do with a couple things. One, we were allowed to tell people where our beer is sold. It used to be
such a strange thing to want to do. You can buy our products here.
Yeah.
If you happen to be interested, if you happen to be on our website for some strange reason, right?
Right. So now we can say, you
awesome.
can find our beer at Draft House or Black Star, and then we can also now call our beer regardless of alcohol content. It used to be
malt item, there were all these really crazy names that weren't correct, right? Like they were misclassifying what the beverage was.
Exactly. Like if we brewed a pale ale that was under 5%, we couldn't call it a pale ale. We'd have to call it a pale beer. And, likewise,
that sounds kind of anemic. Here's a pale beer.
I know, right? It's just nonsensical things.
Here's a flaccid Hefeweizen.
Right. Just because we would brew something that say 8% or 10% alcohol. It's still beer. It's not malt liquor just because it's 9%. It's still beer. So now we can actually call it beer.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So last couple of questions. One thing, what do you guys listen to when you're brewing? What kind of music?
We're pretty eclectic. Definitely there's a metal influence that actually has gone into the name.
Do you find you brew faster when the metal dun 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 dun, and you're like stirring really fast?
It helps me. But our a lot of the other guys, Michael, my brother, is into just like weird stuff that's like sonically totally dissonant and I can't listen to.
And so the brewing just kind of, you're like, whoa, the stirring stops.
Right. And then Jordan, he's into funk, which I think is cool and
That's
works.
pretty,
I like funk. And then I tend to like metal a little bit more. And we make two beers. All of the people at Jester King have had kind of a hand in naming beers, at least.
You get some, really creative labels. Some of the labels, I love the artwork you guys have on them, and they're, unique. They're eye-catching. There's a lot of the thrash metal and they're the black metal. Boxer. I think Boxer's Revenge, is that the one with the horse? That's pretty cool.
That was an Orwell reference, actually.
Yeah. Okay.
We're kind of odd in that for a brewery our size, we actually do have a full-time artist.
You're kidding?
Yeah, his name is Josh Cockrell. He
came with beer, or?
That's part of it, yeah. But he does art maybe 4 days a week, and then does deliveries the other
that's pretty cool.
fifth day. And so he's a great guy.
It's kind of a dream job in a way. It's like
he
do art for beer, deliver beer, drink beer.
Yeah, no, I met him through the homebrewing community, and he just does some. We basically give him free reign just to do. Let's make it weird and just have fun with it.
So moving on from the art, the fact that you really care about that brand name, the art, you probably care about the future. The Jester King Craft Brewery future. Maybe there's some legislative things depending on what happens, because you could do all kinds of awesome things with the space. But just generally future, if you're on the same track you are now, what do you imagine might happen? How might that?
Right, really a big focus of where we're looking to go in terms of what we do is making more oak-aged wild beer, which, as I mentioned, we're very passionate about that style of beer. So, right now we only have a fairly limited space for oak to do wild fermentation. So we're looking to, before the year's out, our goal is to have built a barrel house, which could hold actually a couple thousand barrels to do. Maybe instead of just the 2 or 3 different wild beers, we're currently making 10 to 12 different wild beers, and that's kind of really where we want to go. It's very inefficient in terms of space, and every beer, the shortest amount of time we've ever been able to achieve the flavors that we're looking for tends to be from grain to glass, a minimum of 6 months.
So it's a real time consuming. It's not because regular beer you can go 8 weeks, 12 weeks, or what? Your beers may be longer, but what's the time? What's your typical time for a non-aged?
with our beer is not, I mean, even our Petite Prince, the beer we make the fastest, still takes about 7 weeks to make since it's all bottle conditioned or naturally conditioned. But if you're gonna, make for example, taking a pale ale, and not that this is bad, I don't mean to demean this process, but a pale ale can really go from grain to glass in like 2 weeks if you ferment it out. Filter it, force carbonate it, flash pasteurize it. You can make it.
I must be thinking of the fancy beers that take a lot more time, the artisanal ones.
Right. Yeah.
So
fancy beer.
Yeah, fancy beers. Last question, Austin beer scene. I mean, I've been here about 4 years. Last couple of years, particularly looking at the beer, and it's just been gone wild. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you imagine what's going to happen next year or two? Are there more breweries, more options? Like, what's going to unfold here?
Yeah, I think there'll continue to be more and more breweries. I mean, even as we speak, there's at least another half dozen. There's probably 2 or 3 times that I'm not even aware of. But
they're wanting to get into it. But
exactly, and I think that's good. I mean, ultimately, it's good for beer drinkers, more options, and I think more breweries leads to higher quality as we all kind of try to.
Kind of a competition. I mean, it's actually, I find it's a very healthy competition, almost like a co-opetition between the guys, like everyone's kind of battling it out in a positive way. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, we're right now, nationally, craft beer is about 5 or 6% of beer consumed. In Texas, we're still under 1%.
I've heard that, and it boggles my mind because I think most of that's drunk here in Austin because it's everywhere. Here.
Austin, we're probably like I don't know, closer to the national average, I bet. But statewide, it's still very low.
Other last final question. Other beers around town. You mentioned Uncle Billy's, Pilsner styles. What are other local beers you really like, you've enjoyed, and like drinking?
My favorite style of beer outside of Farmhouse Ale and sour beer is Pilsner. So I mentioned Uncle Billy's. I drink a lot of Live Oak Pils.
They do very German-style beers, but then some of the fabulous examples.
Absolutely, I drink a lot of their Hefeweizen, which again I tend to like lower alcohol beers, and it's.
You save the high alcohol beers for work, and then when you're outside, you drink the low alcohol ones.
I drink a lot of 512's Pecan Porter. It's one of my local favorites.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So. Cool, that's it. I mean, cheers, Proust, na zdrowie, all those fancy sayings. Schlant, I got another one now. Schlant? Oh, I've heard something.
The Irish one, Schlant. I usually just go with cheers. Cheers. But they're all good.
Yeah, well, thank you. Appreciate it. It's been great talking to you. Like I said, I've been here before. Great to have us back, and it's been wonderful. Thanks.
Oh, cool.
All
Thanks,
the best
Greg.
in the future.
Yeah, cheers.